In 1942, German U-boats were sinking Allied ships faster than anyone could build them. The British Admiralty had given up hope until America did the impossible. Welcome back to WW2 Studio. Today, we re-diving into one of the most remarkable untold victories of World War II. The incredible story of how American industrial might turned the tide in the Atlantic. Now, you might think the war was won on the beaches of Normandy or in the skies over Britain, but the truth is, victory was forged in the shipyards of America by ordinary men and women who built vessels so fast that even our closest allies couldn't believe it was possible. Picture this. It's early 1942, and the British admirals are looking at their charts in the Admiralty building in London. The numbers are devastating. German U-boats are prowling the Atlantic like wolves, and they're winning. Every single day, precious cargo ships loaded with food, fuel, and ammunition are being sent to the bottom of the ocean, taking brave merchant sailors with them. The mathematics were brutally simple and terrifying. The Germans were sinking ships faster than Britain and America combined could replace them. Churchill himself knew the awful truth. Britain had maybe 6 months of food reserves left. 6 months before, the island nation would face starvation and surrender. The British admirals had run every calculation, examined every possibility, and their conclusion was grim. There was no way to build ships fast enough to win this race against the Nazi submarines. It was hopeless. But then something extraordinary happened, something that would make those same British admirals shake their heads in disbelief and eventually bow in respect. Henry Kaiser, a construction man from California who had never built a ship in his life, walked into American shipyards and said, "We're going to build them faster than the Germans can sink them." And he didn't just mean a little faster. He meant 3 times faster, 10 times faster, faster than anyone in maritime history had ever imagined. What followed was what Winston Churchill himself would later call a miracle of production. This is the story of the Liberty ship, that humble, unglamorous, welded workhorse that the experts called an ugly duckling. These weren't sleek warships or beautiful ocean liners. They were simple cargo vessels, built with one purpose: to carry the supplies that would keep Britain alive and eventually liberate Europe. And they won the war before the first shot was fired on D-Day, because without them, there would have been no D-Day, no invasion, no victory. If you served in the Merchant Marine or the Navy during those critical years, or if you remember these historic times, perhaps you worked in the shipyards yourself or watched these vessels being built in your hometown. Please share your memories in the comments below. Your stories are living history, and they need to be heard and preserved. And don't forget to subscribe to WW2 Studio and hit that bell icon so you never miss our deep dives into the war that shaped our world and defined the greatest generation. The spring of 1942 was the darkest period of the entire war for Britain. And most people back home in America had no idea just how close our oldest ally was to complete collapse. German U-boats were operating in what their commanders called the happy time, and it was happy for them because they were slaughtering Allied shipping at a rate that defied imagination. Every single month, German submarines were sending over 700,000 tons of Allied shipping to the bottom of the Atlantic. That's not just steel and cargo. That's food, medicine, fuel, tanks, aircraft, and the lives of thousands of merchant sailors who knew every voyage might be their last. Britain is an island, and islands need ships to survive. By early 1942, the British had enough food reserves for perhaps 6 weeks. 6 weeks. Churchill would later write in his memoirs that the U-boat peril was the only thing that truly frightened him during the entire war. He knew something the public didn't. Britain was quite literally starving to death, and there was nothing the Royal Navy could do to stop it. Admiral Karl Donitz, the commander of Germany's U-boat fleet, understood this perfectly. He called it the tonnage war. His strategy was brutally simple. You didn't need to invade Britain if you could just strangle it. Sink more ships than the Allies could build, and Britain would have to sue for peace. The British Admiralty looked at its own shipbuilding capacity and despaired. Using traditional methods, British shipyards needed 8 to 12 months to construct a single cargo vessel. The mathematics was a death sentence. Ships were going down in days, but replacements took nearly a year. When the Americans proposed their solution, the British admirals were polite but skeptical. Build ships in weeks instead of months? Impossible. Use untrained workers? Madness. But Roosevelt had made Churchill a promise. and a West Coast builder named Henry Kaiser was about to make good on it. Britain needed 6 to 7 million tons of new shipping, and Kaiser said he'd deliver it. The Admirals didn't believe him. They were about to learn that American industrial might played by different rules. Henry J. Kaiser was not a shipbuilder. He'd never constructed a vessel in his life. He was a dam builder, a road builder, a man who'd helped create the Hoover Dam and the Grand Coulee Dam. But Kaiser understood something the Admirals didn't. He understood mass production. He looked at shipbuilding the way Henry Ford looked at automobiles, and he asked a revolutionary question. Why are we building ships like it's still 1880? Kaiser's vision was radical. Instead of constructing a ship from keel to deck in one location, he'd build it in sections, prefabricated modules that could be manufactured all over the country, then assembled at the waterfront like a giant jigsaw puzzle. Even more controversial, he insisted on welding instead of riveting. Traditional shipbuilders were horrified. They said welded ships would crack and break apart. But welding was faster, required less skill, and cut construction time by 75%. Kaiser didn't care what the old-timers thought. He had a war to win. The Liberty ship itself was deliberately unglamorous. Based on a simple British tramp steamer design, it was 441 feet long and could carry 10,000 tons of cargo, 300 freight cars worth of supplies. These weren't sleek greyhounds of the sea. They were slow, boxy, and purely functional. Admiral Emery Land, who oversaw the Maritime Commission, took one look at the design and called it dreadful looking. The British nicknamed them ugly ducklings. But that simplicity was the whole point. You didn't need master craftsmen to build a Liberty ship. You needed workers who could follow instructions, and America had millions of them waiting. The shipyards transformed overnight into something America had never seen before. Richmond, California, went from a sleepy town to a tonna industrial colossus with 90,000 workers operating around the clock. Women flooded into the yards, your wives, mothers, and grandmothers, becoming welders, electricians, and crane operators. Rosie the Riveter wasn't just a poster. She was real, and she was building ships. Elderly men told they were too old to fight found they weren't too old to weld. African Americans and minorities, often excluded from good-paying jobs, suddenly found opportunity in the national emergency. Training programs turned housewives into certified welders in just weeks. The yards never slept. 3 shifts, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It was democracy's assembly line, and it was about to bury the Nazis in steel. The first Liberty ships took 230 days to build, still faster than traditional methods, but not fast enough to win the tonnage war. Then something extraordinary happened. As workers gained experience and Kaiser refined his methods, construction times plummeted. By 1943, the average Liberty ship was rolling out of American shipyards in just 42 days. 42 days from keel laying to launching. The British admirals who de-scoffed at American ambition were now cabling London with reports their superiors could barely believe. But the most astonishing achievement came in November 1942, when the Richmond shipyards built the SS Robert E. Peary in 4 days, 15.5 hours. For days. It was a publicity stunt, sure, meant to sell war bonds and boost morale. But it was a real ship that carried real cargo across a real ocean. The message to Hitler was unmistakable. You cannot sink them faster than we can build them. 1943 became the turning point in the Atlantic. For every ship the U-boats managed to send to the bottom, American yards were launching 3 new ones. 18 shipyards from coast to coast were operating at full capacity. Portland, Richmond, Baltimore, Savannah, Houston, all churning out identical vessels with interchangeable parts. By war's end, America had produced 2,710 Liberty ships. At peak production, 3 new ships were sliding down the ways every single day. Donitz and his U-boat commanders realized they'd lost the tonnage war. Germany simply couldn't build enough submarines or torpedoes to keep pace with American production. But let's be clear about something important. This wasn't a bloodless victory. The men who sailed these Liberty ships paid a terrible price. The merchant marines suffered a higher casualty rate than any branch of the military except the Marines. These ships were slow, just 11 knots maximum, making them easy targets for prowling U-boats. They were vulnerable, and the sailors knew it. Yet they kept sailing, voyage after voyage, because the cause demanded it. Some ships were torpedoed and sunk, But many crews survived precisely because Liberty ships were so simple and sturdy. They stayed afloat long enough for rescue. These merchant sailors were civilians, unsung heroes who deserved every bit as much honor as the men in uniform. They faced the wolf packs, and they never stopped coming. By 1943, the numbers told a story that no amount of Nazi propaganda could spin. The Allies had gained 14 million tons of shipping capacity, not just replacing losses, but actually growing the merchant fleet while fighting a two-ocean war. Germany's submarine force was still dangerous, still sinking ships, but they simply couldn't keep up. Admiral Donitz, reading the intelligence reports from his headquarters, understood the grim reality. He later admitted that Germany had lost the production war before it ever had a chance to win the shooting war. The wolf packs were being overwhelmed by an endless stream of American-built vessels. When D-Day finally came on June 6, 1944, it succeeded because of what happened in those shipyards years earlier. Over 2,400 Liberty ships carried the men, tanks, ammunition, and supplies across the English Channel and kept them flowing for months afterward. Without Liberty ships, there would have been no invasion, no liberation, no victory in Europe. Winston Churchill, who'd privately doubted the American boasts back in 1942, became one of the Liberty ship's greatest champions. In his post-war writings and speeches, he praised American industrial production as the decisive factor in Allied victory. The British Admiralty, those skeptical officers who thought Kaiser's promises were a fantasy, reversed their position completely. They'd witnessed something unprecedented in naval history. By war's end, American yards had delivered over 50 million tons of cargo to keep Britain fed, armed, and fighting. 50 million tons. The margin between starvation and survival, between defeat and victory. The Liberty ship's legacy extended far beyond 1945. These supposedly temporary vessels proved so durable that many served into the 1970s. They carried supplies during the Korean War and the Vietnam War, still doing the unglamorous work of keeping America's forces supplied. Today, two Liberty ships remain operational as museum ships, the SS Jeremiah O'Brien in San Francisco and the SS John W. Brown in Baltimore, floating reminders of what ordinary Americans accomplished when the world needed them most. The lesson is timeless. American ingenuity, determination, and the democratic spirit of everyday people can achieve what experts declare impossible. Those shipyard workers, many of them your age now, some watching this video, didn't just build ships. They built victory itself, one weld at a time. The Liberty Ship program stands as one of history's greatest examples of what free people can accomplish when their backs are against the wall. Those British admirals who doubted American capabilities, they learned a lesson they never forgot, that American industrial power fueled by the determination of ordinary workers. Many of them women, elderly folks, and people told they were too old or too inexperienced could achieve what the experts called impossible. 18,000 workers built the SS Robert E. Peary in less than 5 days. Let that sink in for a moment. 18,000 Americans, working together with one purpose, launched a 441-foot cargo ship in the time it takes most of us to finish a work week. Across America, in cities like Richmond, Portland, and Baltimore, grandmothers worked alongside teenagers, welding and riveting their way to victory. They didn't fire a shot, didn't storm a beach, didn't fly a bomber. But make no mistake, they won the war. Think about that the next time someone tells you something can't be done, that you're too old, or that the problem is too big. Those Liberty ships, ugly, slow, dismissed by the experts as dreadful looking, carried the supplies that saved Britain, liberated Europe, and defeated tyranny. For those of you who worked in the shipyards, who sailed on these vessels, or who remember watching them being built in your hometowns, I want you to know something. You were part of something extraordinary. You didn't just build ships. You built freedom itself. I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Did you work in the shipyards? Did you or a family member serve in the Merchant Marine? Do you remember the Liberty ships being launched? Share your memories. This history belongs to you. And your stories need to be preserved for your children, grandchildren, and generations yet to come. If you found this story as inspiring as I do, please give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe to WW2 Studio for more untold stories from the greatest generation, and hit that bell icon so you never miss an episode. Share this video with someone who needs to hear about what Americans accomplished when the world needed them most. Maybe a young person who needs to understand what this generation achieved, or a fellow veteran who remembers these times. From all of us at WW2 Studio, thank you for watching, thank you for your service, and thank you for keeping these memories alive. God bless you, and God bless the greatest generation.